Some places never stopped speaking, even after everything else fell silent. Verdant edge still whispered, through the brittle groan of twisted metal, the soft sigh of wind filtering through broken rafters, and the hush of snow blanketing forgotten homes like a burial cloth. What was once a thriving terraformed settlement now stood as a frozen mausoleum, caught in the breath between life and collapse. Snow had buried the roads, wound its way into the hollow chests of rusting machines, and blunted even the most jagged ruins. Everything here had been claimed by frost except the echo of motion. Jonas Riven moved alone through that memory, his boots crunching gently on the frozen crust. Behind him, a sensor sled hissed across the surface, trailing on a tether, its low hum swallowed by the stillness. His breath clouded inside the helmet and disappeared just as quickly. The silence wasn't vacant. It observed. The planet had once been called Sire 7, though hardly anyone still used the name. Its weather patterns had been mild once, artificially managed, its soil fertile for hybrid agriculture. But when the core regulating the terraforming process shattered, violent storms arrived swiftly and the frost came harder. No one had time to evacuate, or perhaps no one in charge cared enough to send ships. Jonas had returned to map the dead. Technically, he was a field archivist under contract to mark remnants of infrastructure for recovery units. But Verdant Edge offered nothing worth salvaging. The mission was quiet work, and Jonas liked it that way. No one out here asked why he volunteered for the coldest sectors or why he refused to take partnered posts after the disaster at Echo Bluffs. He adjusted the scarf beneath his collar, more out of habit than warmth. The routine steadied him. Breathing helped. Moving helped. Remembering did not. He was scanning the remnants of a collapsed biodome tag when he heard it, so faint it barely registered as sound. Not the creak of old supports or the crack of ice under pressure. Something else. A shallow, irregular hitch, like someone trying to cry without drawing attention. Jonas stopped, turning slowly, his eyes sweeping the snow-covered plain. Near what was left of a portable evacuation pod, a half-buried structure with one side split open, he saw something that didn't fit. Not rust, not ice. A flicker of green weakly shifting. He let the sled line drop and moved toward it, steps long and cautious. His boots sank deep, muffling the crunch. As he neared, he caught a scent, faint organic decomposition mixed with sterile plastic and something rich and earthen, like wet bark. The opening in the pod was just large enough to crawl through. Jonas crouched, leaned in. She was curled into the far corner, limbs knotted around herself, her skin a pale green tinged with bluish hues near the lips. Dark hair clung to her face, stiffened by frost, with crystals dusting her eyelashes. Her clothing, likely once vibrant, had faded and stiffened with ice. Her eyes remained open, glassy, locked on the far wall as if afraid that blinking would break something fragile. She didn't respond when he spoke gently. Still nothing. Jonas reached behind him, unfastened his insulated cloak, and spread the lining like a wing. He didn't move closer, just opened the warmth. Her eyes shifted slowly, deliberately, toward him, then down. Her arms clutched a wooden pendant, carved in spiraling script. She blinked once, heavily. "Mama said to wait," she whispered, voice catching like wind through dried leaves. So I waited. The words twisted something in Jonas he hadn't realized still lived. "You did well," he said evenly. "You stayed safe. But it's too cold now. You can't wait here anymore." He edged closer, slow and deliberate, letting her see each move. She flinched when he touched her, but didn't resist. Her skin was so cold it alarmed him. He wrapped her in the cloak gently, avoiding sudden movements. She was light, disturbingly so. As he lifted her, she leaned into him, pressing her face into his chest. "Mama went into the snow," she mumbled. The snow made her sleep. Jonas didn't reply. He turned, scanning the area. Snow drifts had settled softly, but a path remained visible. Faint boot prints, dragged steps, knee marks. A trail that led from the shelter toward the shattered skeleton of a comms tower. He followed. The wind picked up, whispering fragments of static from long-dead public alert systems. "Please remain calm. Emergency evac protocols will..." Then, silence again. At the base of a rise, half buried under snow, lay a figure unmistakably adult, curled on her side, arms stretched toward the broken beacon. Snow covered her, but some had melted from body heat, leaving a faint impression in the frost. Jonas approached slowly, cradling the child close. He knelt beside the form. The woman's skin bore the same green tint as the girl's, lips violet near the edges. Her long dark hair had frozen into stiff strands woven with needles of ice. Her body remained still, but not yet stiff. He reached out. "Leisha," he guessed softly, "if you can hear me, your daughter's safe. No movement." He touched her shoulder. Still nothing. Then the child stirred. "Mama!" It was barely a whisper, but it struck like a storm. The woman's eyes flew open. She gasped, a ragged primal sound, and tried to move. Her limbs trembled violently, body folding under the strain. Jonas caught her instinctively, shielding the girl as her hands scrabbled weakly for support. She latched onto his wrist, fingers shaking but alive. Her gaze dropped to the child. Her eyes widened. Her lips parted without sound. Tears came instantly, trailing down wind-chafed cheeks. "I thought the storm?" She couldn't finish. "She's all right," Jonas said quietly. "You're both going to be all right, but we have to go." Now Lisha didn't speak. She leaned into her child, breathing her in like she needed her to survive. Jonas felt her weight collapse against him, shoulders trembling from more than cold. He wrapped his cloak around them both. It wasn't enough, but it was something. As he guided them back across the frozen plain, a strange quiet settled inside him. Not peace, not yet, but something like it. The beginning of thaw. For the first time in years, Jonas felt the shape of a future worth mapping. Jonas carried them both through the deepening cold, the child pressed to his chest and her mother clinging to his side, like something half-drowned, half-rooted, refusing to let go. Snow danced in tightening spirals around his boots, gathering in the folds of his coat and stinging along the seam of his neck. Each step became heavier, burdened by the weight of 3 lives trying to stay warm, trying to stay real. He didn't speak. Lisha didn't either, but her grip on his arm remained locked, a quiet tether of survival. The shelter came into view just as the wind turned cruel again. It wasn't much, just a half-buried geodome, masked by snow-laced mesh connected to a geothermal vein below the crust. Out here, that counted as luxury. Jonas keyed the entry panel and waited as the door hissed open, depressurizing with a slow breath. Warmth spilled out, heavy and metallic, like steam from a forgotten forge. He guided them inside. The girl, still wrapped in his thermal cloak, blinked up at the orange moss light suspended along the ceiling like a canopy of fading stars. The warmth struck her all at once and she whimpered, a small, unfiltered sound, curling tighter into his chest. "Set her down," Lisha rasped. Her voice was hoarse from cold but steady. Jonas knelt, lowering the child onto the heated floor mat near the central vent. It thrummed gently beneath them, pulsing with the rhythm of the geothermal system, a stubborn heart refusing to fail. Lisha knelt beside her daughter, her hands hovering unsure, then finally settling over the child's cheeks. Her fingers were trembling and raw, but she touched the girl as though afraid her skin might turn to vapor if she pressed too hard. "Yana," she whispered, "little sprout, stay warm." The child stirred, eyes fluttering beneath half-frozen lashes. "Mama," she murmured, "he smells like dry leaves." "I like it." A faint smile touched Lisha's lips. Not the kind that lifts the mouth, but the kind you exhale after holding your breath for too long. Jonas kept busy without being asked. He unpacked emergency rations, activated a second heating stone, and placed a brew pouch in the kettle. The hiss and pop of pressurized water filled the quiet, a welcome sound that grounded them all. Lisha remained crouched, both hands on her daughter, like if she let go, even for a second, it might all unravel. Her vines, previously frozen, had begun to thaw, softening, beginning to uncurl. But her blossoms stayed closed, curled tightly at her joints. Her entire form, though no longer encased in frost, still looked brittle, as if one wrong word might crack her apart. She didn't thank him. She didn't look at him. That was fine. Jonas hadn't come for gratitude. He placed a foil-wrapped nutrient bar beside her and offered a pouch of heated broth. She stared at the items but didn't reach out. "Eat," he said softly. I can't. You need to. Her eyes met his. Not sharp, not even questioning, just hollow. I let her think I was dead. I told her to wait and she did. She shouldn't have had to. Jonas didn't argue. He didn't offer comfort. Instead, he left the food within reach and returned to the kettle. The scent of warm herbs and earth began to fill the space, bitter and grounding. Behind him, he heard her move, a hand reaching, the quiet crinkle of foil, the faintest sound of lips parting, chewing slowly. He poured the broth into 2 insulated mugs and handed one to her. She accepted without a word, fingers shaking as she drank. Yana shifted closer to the vent, eyes heavy but open. Are we ghosts now, Mama? No, Leisha answered, her voice quiet and sure. He found us. Ghosts don't get found. The words settled into Jonas like something sacred. He didn't turn, just watched the steam curl from the kettle's spout. Later, when Yana finally slept, breath even and small hands still curled around a fold of her mother's tunic, Jonas adjusted the dome's heat field to a steadier warmth. Leisha observed him, her eyes measuring. She asked the question finally, when the silence had lasted long enough to matter. Why are you here? The tone wasn't defensive, just tired. Mapping dead zones, Jonas replied, or what's left of them. Alone. He nodded. Most of your kind don't travel alone. I do. She considered that, then looked down at her daughter again. I was born on a colony like this, warm, wet, full of light. We weren't built for the cold, but you endured it. She said nothing at first. Then she raised her arm and revealed a tight cluster of buds along her forearm, shriveled, closed, the color of damp wood. I stopped blooming. Jonas didn't reach for her. He only looked, at her, not away, not past, at her. Maybe the ground's still good, he said quietly. Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. Maybe. They sat in silence for a long time, the dome quiet around them. Outside, the snow whispered against the mesh. Inside, the heat held. Yana slept, and for now that was enough. A single pale bud opened behind Leisha's ear. Neither of them spoke about it, but both of them saw. The shelter had its own rhythm. Jonas had spent enough nights inside to recognize it. The pulse of the geothermal veins, the low whir of recycled air, the occasional pop of shifting stone beneath the ice. But now the rhythm had changed. Now there were 3 heartbeats instead of 1. Yana slept with a hand beneath her cheek, fingers twitching in dreams. Leisha sat beside her, silent. Her vines lay across her lap like threads gone slack. One, barely the width of a strand of hair, brushed against her daughter's shoulder, lightly like a tether. She hadn't moved in an hour. Jonas hadn't spoken since offering her a second bowl of broth. He kept himself busy, or at least pretended to, checking the vent balance, wiping down his gloves, running system diagnostics he knew didn't need running. He told himself it was to give her space, but he knew the truth. He didn't know how to enter a silence that didn't belong to him. Leisha's voice when it came was rough. I didn't cry, she said. Not once in the shelter. I just held the pendant. Waited. Jonas set aside the tool in his hand. You told her to. I did. Her fingers flexed, vines tightening. I thought if she stayed still, the cold might miss her, or whatever came after. He didn't answer. Nothing said in return would be honest without sounding like comfort, and comfort was a lie she didn't want. She watched me fall, Leisha added. Watched the color leave my skin. My kind doesn't grieve the way yours does. We keep it inside, store it in the vines. That's how we survive. But she's too small. It's too much. Jonas retrieved a small silver packet from the ration shelf and returned to her side. He crouched. Here. She glanced at it, then back to his face. I can do it. Let me, he said. You've done enough on your own. For a moment he thought she'd refuse, but then, slowly, she extended her hands. They were cracked, ridged, the small blossoms near her wrists still drawn tight. He opened the salve, scooping a portion and warming it between his palms before gently spreading it into the creases of her skin. His hands were steady, careful. When he reached her left wrist, she flinched. Reflex, nothing more. But her breath caught. I'm not afraid of you. I know, but your body is. That's all right. She looked away, blinking fast. That's not what I want it to be. He didn't push. He finished applying the ointment, then leaned back. Not far, but not imposing either. She flexed her fingers, watching the skin regain some softness. The new pinkness returned slowly to her knuckles. It wasn't much, but it was something living. She bloomed last spring, Leisha said after a while. Pale yellow, her first. She was so proud. Ran through the commune showing everyone. Jonas pictured it. A small child running, vines streaming behind, blossoms catching the light. After the collapse, Leisha continued, we were told help would come. We had working beacons, 3 of them. We waited a week, then another. The sky changed. The cold came. She paused. My partner tried to make it to the relay post. He didn't return. Jonas didn't speak. He didn't need to. I buried him with the root system, Leisha said. But there was no time to perform his cycle. I don't even know if his name took. Jonas nodded slowly. I used to keep lists, coordinates, names, cause of death. Trying to make it mean something. Does it? Number. But remembering helps. A faint glow stirred behind her ear. Not a full bloom, but a pulse. She noticed brushing it with tentative fingers, surprised at her own body reacting to something beyond sorrow. Yana stirred on the mat. Mama, I'm here, little sprout. The girl blinked, bleary-eyed. Is it morning? Not yet. Jonas dimmed the vent field, letting the dome's lights fade to amber, soft and quiet, sleep-inducing. Yana turned again, this time facing both of them. She reached out, brushing Leisha's hand, then paused near Jonas's knee. Her fingers hovered. He didn't move. You feel like trees, she mumbled. Big old ones that don't fall. Then she drifted back to sleep. Leisha stared at her daughter, then at Jonas. Her lips moved, but no words came. Instead, she reached down and placed her hand on the floor between them. A single vine extended from her wrist, thin, pale, and tentative, reaching just far enough to rest beside Jonas's boot. Not touching, just near. Jonas leaned forward and set his palm on the ground close to it, matching the distance. Still not touching. Just present. I won't leave, he said. I know, Leisha replied. Her voice was soft, nearly gone. Outside, the wind howled across the dome, but inside, the warmth endured. Blossoms waited, and somewhere beneath the frost, something had begun to root. The storm had passed, but its silence lingered like breath held too long. The dome now felt truly warm, not just in temperature, but in rhythm, in the stillness of lives no longer waiting to shatter. Leisha sat cross-legged by the moss-covered wall, her skin still damp from the wash Jonas had prepared. She hadn't let him assist, but she hadn't pushed him away either. Her long black hair hung loosely down her back, softening at the tips now that the tension had finally begun to ease. A single pale bloom rested behind her ear, fluttering like a cautious flag of survival. Yana was curled up near the geothermal vent, snug beneath a blanket stitched from woven plant fibers Jonas had salvaged from an abandoned education pod. She slept as if the storm had never touched her, but one hand remained tightly wrapped around the carved wooden pendant she'd clutched in the snow. Even in dreams, she didn't let go. Leisha watched her child for a long while before speaking. She almost died out there, she said quietly, voice like a reed in the wind. Because I broke. Jonas didn't answer right away. He poured hot water into 2 clay cups and handed one to her. She accepted it without looking up. I went out to find help, she continued. We were meant to be evacuated with the others, but the transport came early. Only those in the upper district got out. The lower zones flooded. Communication collapsed. Her voice carried no bitterness, just exhaustion and something deeper, something fossilized. I tried to dig us out. The roots were wet. My internal systems overloaded. I shut down. That's what we do. Preserve energy. Bury. I think I was ready to go. Jonas sat down across from her. The fire between them crackled softly. Outside, trails of melted frost slipped down the dome's edge like the last tears of the storm. My mother used to say, he murmured, that grief rots when kept in silence. We aren't made to carry it alone. Leisha looked up, surprised, not by the words but by the way he said them, gently and with understanding. You lost someone. He nodded once. A lot of someones, but one in particular. She didn't ask who. He didn't explain. Still, something in the air shifted. Something that allowed breathing again. I used to be a memorial archivist, he said. Not just terrain maps. I recorded loss, names, coordinates, places where ships vanished, where people fell. I marked them so no one would forget. She studied him in the dim light. Verdant Edge was supposed to be beautiful. It was. A new biome, designed for root cultures like yours. But the terraforming was rushed. Layers destabilized. Water tables rose. The engineers pulled funding. By the time my team arrived, it was already falling apart. And you stayed, he nodded, sipping the tea. I stayed. Leisha didn't respond for a long while. She just traced the rim of her cup slowly with one fingertip. My people don't speak about grief. We aren't allowed. We compost it, feed it into whatever comes next. But after my partner died, I couldn't grow anything. Couldn't root. I didn't even touch soil. Was he here? She nodded. Botanist. Helped build the first biowalls. When the wall collapsed, he was swept under the nutrient bed. They never found the body. Jonas's breath caught, but he said nothing. Leisha turned away quickly. I shouldn't have told you that. Why not? Because now you'll think I'm weak. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, voice low. I've seen weak. You're not it. A bitter smile threatened her face but didn't hold. My vines stopped blooming after he died. They only flower when the ground feels safe. He regarded her for a long moment. Then, without touching her, he gestured toward the soft bloom behind her ear. That one seems to disagree. Her hand brushed the petal absently, like she'd forgotten it was there. Her breath hitched. I didn't even feel it open. Maybe you didn't need to. What passed between them wasn't confession, wasn't forgiveness. It was something quiet, a space made, a space shared. Later, as they laid out the sleeping mats and layered thermal packs along the floor, Leisha hesitated. Yana was already curled up on one side, arms splayed like roots seeking warmth. Across the shelter, Jonas had prepared his mat, neatly placed a few paces away. You don't have to, he said gently, noticing her pause. I can move farther if… No, she hesitated. It's just our sleep cycles. They sync to proximity. If someone rests nearby, our systems relax, but only if the presence is trusted. He nodded. Then don't sleep near someone you don't trust. Leisha looked at her daughter, then at him. I'm not sure what I trust anymore. Jonas didn't push. He simply lay down where he was, facing the wall, and dimmed the lights. Leisha settled beside Yana, her body still tense. But in the quiet of the dome, with the storm's echo fading from her bones, she listened to his breathing, steady and calm, and slowly her vines began to unfurl. She slept, the first true sleep in weeks. She didn't wake again until morning. When Jonas awoke, Leisha was already up. She sat just outside the dome, where the mist clung to the edges of the valley and the frost shimmered like breath over the earth. Her knees were drawn up, arms resting across them, black hair damp with morning dew. Her green skin caught the faintest light from the rising sun. He didn't disturb her. He simply set the kettle on the solar plate and waited for the hiss. You breathe loud in your sleep, she said after a while without turning. He smiled faintly. Sorry. She glanced over her shoulder. Her lips curled just slightly. It wasn't a complaint. When she stood, her joints cracked quietly. Her posture no longer folded inward. Her vines hung more loosely, her blossoms still modest, but no longer hidden. As she passed Jonas on her way back inside, her arm brushed his. Not an accident, not quite on purpose. Inside, Yana was still sleeping near the vent, her mouth slightly open, snoring gently. The pendant was now strung with a piece of Jonas's spare twine, resting over her chest like a second heartbeat. She talks in her sleep, Leisha murmured, kneeling beside her. Last night, she whispered, don't worry, the human's watching. Jonas let that sit for a moment. I think she feels safe here. Leisha nodded faintly. then more softly added, I think I do too. They shared breakfast in silence. Root strips, warm starch, flatbread dipped in citrus preserve Jonas had stored from his last station. Leisha didn't ask where he'd found it, but her fingers lingered on the edge of the cup as she drank. When the liquid burned slightly hot, she didn't flinch. She simply closed her eyes and swallowed. It wasn't the taste she was responding to, it was memory. Later, Yana insisted on helping Jonas repair one of the collapsed wind sensors on the nearby ridge. She followed him eagerly, boots too big, arms spread wide for balance. Leisha trailed behind, keeping one eye on the child and the other on the open sky. The climb was slow. Frost cracked underfoot. Wind whispered through broken reeds and bramble. Do you fix everything? Yana asked suddenly, grabbing his gloved hand. Not everything, Jonas said, but I try. Leisha looked at him then, not with caution, but with something quieter, something wondering. At the summit, the sensor was buried under ice. Jonas dug carefully, brushing snow away until the panel flickered to life. He adjusted the housing with practiced fingers, breath fogging in front of him. Leisha crouched nearby, watching him with something like reverence. You know the language of broken things, she said. I had to learn it. Why? He paused, one hand frozen in place. Because someone once tried to fix me, and I didn't let them. Silence settled like snow. Leisha stood and stepped closer. The wind shifted, her scent drifted, like damp bark, mineral soil, and rain on leaves. She didn't touch him, but the space between them felt suddenly narrow, electric. Later that night, after Yana had fallen asleep, arms sprawled as if grasping stars, Jonas retrieved an old datapad from a sealed crate. He tapped through half-broken logs and corrupted files until one image loaded. Would you like to see something? He asked. Leisha hesitated, then sat beside him, wrapping her arms around her knees. He turned the screen toward her. A blurry, water-damaged photo came to life. Her people, building the first greenhouses on the southern terrace. Her partner, young, smiling, hands covered in rich black soil, a vine trailing from his wrist to hers. Her breath caught. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She reached out and placed her palm on the screen, covering the image. You saved this. I archived everything when I arrived. I didn't want this place to vanish. She looked at him, really looked. You don't know us. You had no reason to care. I didn't at first. I was just recording loss. And now? Now I want to remember what survived. Her chest rose with a trembling breath. He powered off the datapad. The fire crackled quietly between them. Shadows flickered across the moss-coated walls. Then Leisha leaned in, slow, uncertain, and rested her forehead against his. No pressure, no hunger, just stillness, just presence. I think I'm starting to grow again, she whispered. His voice came out rougher than intended. Good. The ground here's ready. She kissed him, not with urgency or fire, but with the slow certainty of something long buried, now reaching for light. Her lips asked permission with every breath. His response came not with demand, but patience, letting her choose, letting her lead. When they parted, she rested her head on his shoulder. He wrapped one arm around her, his palm resting gently at the small of her back. You're not what I thought your kind would be, she murmured. And you're nothing like the stories we heard, he replied. Outside, for the first time, stars shimmered clearly through the thinning clouds. Inside, Leisha slept. Not because she was exhausted, but because she finally could. Jonas remained beside her, not because he feared the dark, but because something in this place now felt worth guarding. The next morning began not with silence, but with birdsong. Not real birds. Verdant Edge had none left, but an old bioacoustic loop Jonas had restored months ago. It played quietly through the dome's audio system, simulating birds from ancient forests long lost. The sounds rose with the warmth, soft and sweet like memories. Leisha stirred first, finding herself still curled against Jonas's side, her cheek resting just above his heart. His arm draped lightly across her waist, not heavy, just enough to make her feel held. For a long time she didn't move. The moment felt so still, even breathing felt like it might disturb it. Then Yana's voice broke the quiet. You sleep close now, like tree knots. Jonas cracked an eye open and smiled. Morning. Leisha groaned softly and buried her face into his shoulder. Yana grinned, tugging on her mother's wrist. Do I get to sleep in the middle again? I like the middle. We'll make space, Jonas said easily. They ate breakfast side by side with no hesitation. No lingering walls, just hands brushing over shared food, the simple rhythm of a morning that felt like it belonged to them. But peace, like warmth, didn't linger long on Verdant Edge. The alert came in the early afternoon. A low vibration thrummed beneath the floor of the dome. Jonas moved to the console and checked the signal. A pulsing beacon, faint but consistent. A recovery drone. Leisha's shoulders tightened. She stood quickly, eyes sharpening, vines lifting subtly along her back. Not them. Not again. They won't take you, Jonas said, already pulling on his coat. They took others. Labeled us as unstable flora-bonded dependents. Do you know what that means under evac codes? Yes, Jonas said calmly. Then you know they won't ask. They'll extract. He nodded. Then we give them a reason not to. He stepped out into the snow as the wind picked up again. The sky was pale and broken above him, a single blinking dot of light drifting toward the tree line. When the drone broke through the canopy, Jonas was already waiting in the open, standing tall, arms at his sides, unarmed. Behind him, the dome glowed faintly with moss-filtered light. The drone hovered, scanning. A voice emerged from its speaker, mechanical and hollow. Unregistered biosignatures detected. Prepare subjects for extraction. No, Jonas said flatly. You're a field unit. Your clearance permits observation, not custody. I invoke Sanctuary Clause 19 Gamma. Petition for cohabitation settlement filed on site. Pause static. Unrecognized clause. Please submit through authorized channels. I am the channel, Jonas snapped. I've logged 17 years of fieldwork, 49 lost sites. I earned the right to keep what I found. The drone inched closer. Its hum grew louder. Failure to comply will initiate collection protocol. Behind him, the dome's door opened. Leisha stepped out into the cold, Yana at her side, half hidden behind her mother's legs. Leisha carried no weapon, only her daughter's hand and a single freshly bloomed stem cut from her own body. Jonas turned slightly and looked at her. You don't have to come out. I do. And together they stood, man, woman, child, before a machine too blind to understand what survival looked like. The drone scanner locked onto Leisha. Jonas moved between them. Get back in the sky, he said clearly. There's nothing here for you. A beat passed. Then the drone slowly rose, hovered, turned, and left. Only after its whine disappeared into the clouds did Jonas breathe again. Only then did Leisha collapse slightly forward, not from fear but from relief. He caught her, arms wrapped tight around her trembling form, vines brushing his sleeves. I thought I could never belong anywhere, she whispered. He said nothing, just pressed his lips to her temple and held her closer. Later that evening, after the false daylight had dimmed, Jonas sat by the hearth with Yana in his lap. She held the discarded drone beacon, now little more than dead metal and brittle circuits. Is it gone forever, she asked. Yes, Jonas said. It won't come back. Good. She looked down at the wrecked device and added softly, I like being a tree knot. From across the dome, Leisha watched them, her expression unreadable but calm. Her blossoms were open now, casting soft pink glows across the walls. Her vines had rooted lightly into the soil beneath the sleeping pads. Not deep, just enough to feel the pulse of the earth. She crossed the floor without a word and curled into Jonas's side. Yana, already grinning, wedged herself between them. What are we now? She asked sleepily. Jonas looked to Leisha. She touched his hand gently. A root family, she said. We twist, but we hold. And through the night, not even the wind dared to intrude. Tomorrow would come, and they would still be here, together. It began not with flame, but with warmth. Not the kind created by machines, but something deeper, older. The warmth of roots taking hold, the warmth of staying. Weeks passed. The frost retreated slowly in spiraling patterns, unveiling the rich black soil beneath. Verdant Edge hadn't forgotten how to grow. It had only needed reminding. Jonas's dome transformed. Moss now covered every interior wall, glowing faintly with steady biolight. Lisha's root trails spread across the floor in gentle arcs, guiding small gardens she nurtured from pieces of herself. Tiny shoots of green and pink pulsed with life between their sleeping mats. Yana had named every one of them. She also had a chalkboard now, an actual one, rescued from the ruins of a learning pod. Jonas had repaired it, and she filled it daily with drawings. Her little root family, arms tangled around one another. Stars and frogs orbiting them like silent guardians. Outside, Jonas dug channels through the soil to direct the spring runoff. The rains had returned and water pooled near the entrance, threatening the new beds. He worked with his hands, sleeves rolled past his elbows, palms stained in cold, wet dirt. There was reverence in the way he worked, like he wasn't just shaping the land, but healing it. Lisha came out to watch. Her blossoms caught raindrops like tiny lanterns. Her vines lifted gently in the breeze. "You know," she said softly, "on my homeworld, planting with bare hands is something only life-bringers do." Jonas looked up, wiping his brow. "Is that a compliment?" She tilted her head, the rain slipping from her shoulders. "It's a confession." "Of what?" "That I don't wonder anymore whether I belong here." They stood in silence, the soft tick of rain pattering across the dome. Then Lisha stepped forward. She took his muddied hand and pressed it gently to her chest, right above the cluster of vines that had bloomed beneath her collarbone. "They grew back because you waited," she said. "Because you didn't pull." He searched her eyes. "You think I didn't want to?" "I think you didn't let wanting become taking." His voice was low. "That matters to you?" "More than anything." Behind them, the dome door creaked open. Yana stepped out barefoot, holding something carefully in her small hands. "I made this," she announced, "for when we go somewhere else. If we ever do." She held out a bundle, woven reeds and binding twine, two stones sealed together with sap. Crude, beautiful. "A family knot," she said, "so we don't forget." Jonas accepted it with both hands. "Thank you." Lisha took it next, examining it. Then she wrapped one of her vines gently around its edge. "Wherever we go," she said, "this will root us." And they did go. 3 weeks later, after Jonas's petition finally made it through the backlog, the shuttle beacon activated. A low hum stirred the air as an old supply cruiser entered orbit. No soldiers, no orders, just a drop of farming tools, insulation units, and a handwritten note from Jonas's former supervisor. "They say this land is dead. You proved it isn't. Stay well." They didn't leave. They expanded. The single dome became 2, then 3. A greenhouse blossomed under Lisha's design, half organic, its walls reinforced with vines that breathed with the wind. Yana made friends with frogs and named every one of them. She grew taller. Her laughter became part of the air. One night, long after the stars had returned and the storm stopped knocking, Jonas stepped outside to find Lisha watching the horizon. Her vines had grown long now, flowing freely behind her. Her hair was laced with living leaves. She didn't look like someone who had ever broken. She turned and smiled. "Still afraid of staying?" "No," he said, "afraid of never starting." "Then start now." She stepped into his arms and kissed him. Not gently this time, but wholly, with the weight of everything they had carried, everything they had planted. Like a bloom breaking open for light, it was not a question. It was an answer. Yana's voice called from inside the dome. "Don't forget to close the vents." The frogs sneak in. They laughed. Lisha laced her fingers with his. "You were a map maker once," she murmured. "I still am." She leaned into him. "Then map this." And he did. Every day forward, every storm survived, every root that held, every night spent curled in a home that now hummed with life, not because they were rescued, but because they rescued each other. And this time, the home stayed standing. The sun came softly that morning, like it hadn't dared show its face for years. It painted the sky in warm amber, glazed the leaves in gold, and turned the stones outside the dome into glowing trails. The ground, once gray and shivering, exhaled warmth. Real warmth, the kind that stayed. Jonas sat near the edge of the garden, hands sunk deep in soil. The hum of old machines had faded, replaced by the calls of frog song and vine singers. The kettle hissed gently on the heat stone, trailing herbal steam into the air. But he didn't move. He was watching her. Yana, barefoot and laughing, dashed through puddles without fear of frost. Her hair streamed behind her like a flag of freedom. Her green skin shimmered beneath the sunlight, small bloom scars on her arms catching the light. She twirled and leapt, carrying a stick in one hand and a vine-twined doll in the other. The world was her stage. "Don't go near the trench," Leisha called, stepping out with a bowl of fresh roots. Her voice held no edge. "Only care." "I won't," Yana shouted, breathless. "I'm building a sun pool for the frogs. They like it warm, too." Jonas chuckled. "She's turning into an engineer." Leisha smiled as she lowered herself beside him. "She's turning into someone who isn't afraid." They watched their daughter shape the soil, pack it, build it, bless it. She crouched near the puddle and whispered to the sun, "Bless this water. Let it feel safe." Jonas swallowed the lump in his throat. "She remembers, but not with pain," Leisha said. "She carries it like a root, deep but not broken." They didn't speak for a long time, just sat, hands brushing occasionally as the day warmed. Yana came running, cheeks flushed, holding her frog trap. "Look," she cried, "it works. See?" Inside the shallow bowl sat a single frog, glimmering and lazy, breathing in time with the earth. "He came to me," she said. "I didn't catch him. He just came." Jonas smiled. "Sometimes that's all love is." Yana tilted her head. "A frog?" "No," he said with a soft laugh. "Something that chooses to stay." She looked at the frog, then at Jonas, then beamed. "Then I'm staying too. Forever." She climbed into Jonas's lap, muddy and grinning. Leisha reached out to wipe a smear of clay from her daughter's cheek. The sunlight spilled across them like a promise. The breeze moved through the trees, not with warning, but with life. The world had turned green again, and this time, it was their turn to grow.